This week in post, unscripted, unrehearsed, uncut. It's a live edit. Hi everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post. Before I dive into today's live edit, I want to hear from you. Please send me in your photo questions, whether it's post-processing, how to use your camera, field questions, anything photography related. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to make sure this is a two-way conversation and not just me talking to what's effectively an empty room right now. With that, let's get into today's video. Doing a live edit. Many people have asked, when are you going to do another live edit? It's been a while. It's actually been, going a couple of months maybe? So it's definitely time. So we're going to just dive right into Lightroom. I'm going to start off with this photo I have here. It's kind of an outtake, so to speak, from a shot I did down in Coronado. And I'm going to see what we can do and take this in whatever direction we're able to. I like the bones of it, and compositionally is pretty all right. One of the first things I'm going to do is just I'm scanning the image and looking around it. I see a little bit of distractions around the edges, doing the patrol around the borders here. I'm not doing anything correctly with the horizon. I think I was shooting this handheld. Actually, no, I probably wasn't. F4, 1.6. Yeah, this was on a tripod. I just did a poor job leveling it. So I need to fix that up. And then see what we can do about adding some color. We might be able to take this was the kind of a blue hour type shot. It was very gray morning. Might be able to add some blueness back into the sky. So those are the kind of things that are going through my head as I'm looking at this here. So let's begin. Quickly do lens corrections and then R to bring up the crop tool. Let's get this angle taken care of. So I'm going to click, drag across the horizon of the harbor. That'll be great. And that took care of most of this little distraction over here. Let's go ahead and do a little more cropping, as it's going to save me time of having to try to do any type of brushing or so forth. It's not all that interesting for the photo to have that little extra bits of building there. Same thing on the left edge. I'm just going to cut out one of those two towers. It's right over here. And we're going to call that pretty good. So we can go into, let's see, next we'll do spot removal check. Q key for spot removal. Press A. I've got one something or other up there. And Lightroom, I don't know why you choose places that you choose sometimes for healing. But that is about all we're going to need there. Just that one little touch. Okay, let's get into kind of the fundamentals here. This is underexposed. I'm pretty sure I see clipping here. It's going to be most likely the city lights. J key. Yeah, I've got little bits of highlights here. If I press J on and off, you can see like this reflection is clipping a little bit. And that's to be expected. There's no relevant, meaningful detail there. And because of that, I'm actually going to bump the exposure up a little bit more. Just a little bit. Because my subject is this boat. This is backdrop. And I might even darken that as we get into the processing. White balance. Let us try to make the boat white. So somewhere around there. Okay, that's adding a fair amount of warmth. I'm going to back that off a little bit because this was grayish. And so that's going to, there's a fair amount of blue gray tone all through the scene. And that's going to be reflecting and bouncing around and adding that level of color cast to the photo. I actually want to keep it more natural for this one. I don't want to arbitrarily or artificially change any of that. Move on to white and black point. I think I'm going to be fine with white point. If I option click, I've got all my clipping there, reset that, and maybe actually, since I have clipping, I might still just bump it up a little bit. I'm watching the boat here to see about opening up the whites there, make those a little brighter. I'm fine if the lights in the background get clipped. They're soft, they're out of focus. I purposely shot this at f4, just wanting the boat to be in focus and let the city, kind of go fuzzy. Check the blacks. So we've already got some deep blacks in the lower right corner. I'm going to keep those. Let's nudge that negative just a little bit. All right, shadows. This will be for the foreground. The foreground's primarily shadowy. We'll open that up, drag the highlights down so we'll get a little bit more going in the sky in the background. That's pretty good. Clarity, just a touch. I'll probably do more of this in the photo suite. Same thing with vibrance. The one thing I do want to play with, though, is this sky. Let me bring up hue saturation, because this is mainly blue tones, right? As I hover, if I click this little arrow here and I hover over various spots in the image, you're going to see, like here I'm hovering over the water, that's predominantly blue. If I hover over this, I'm getting that aqua green color showing up. And the hue saturation luminance, you see this highlight going on here showing me what color am I about to affect if I were to click and start dragging. I want to go into the blue area and make those more blue. So I'm going to just click and drag upward a little bit. And this is all the same tone. Let's go into luminance and do the same type of thing, but darken the blues, make those a little bit deeper, just nudging that down. And for hue, what about doing the same thing, nudging this more toward blue? So those are a few subtle things, but when I show you the before and the after, those are really making a difference. Now, unfortunately, I'm getting some of that blue here. It doesn't bother me that much. This is kind of a secondary foreground element, so that's okay. It is picking up some of this saturation and darkening of blues there. And unfortunately, you don't get these controls in some of the brushing tools that Lightroom has. That really, really ought to be there. One other thing to do in Lightroom here, grab a gradient mask and let's just drag this over kind of the midway to the water and fade this out some. We'll darken this a little bit. Just a little bit, maybe like that. Maybe even cool it down. That's starting to look a little bit grungy. Let me turn off the exposure change and just do the temperature change. Just a touch. Let me see that before and after. It's subtle, but I like it. One thing I will need to do is remove this from that sailboat mast here. So I'm going to turn on the overlay and we can see that I'm affecting this mast, which is really my foreground. I'm not going to worry about the thin little wires because those are, well, they're effectively dark and black and it wouldn't matter anyway. And it'd be really, really hard to mask. So I'm going to hit the erase here, auto mask, turn the flow up almost all the way there. Shrink down my brush here a little bit so I can just paint through the mast and remove that change in color tone from it only. There. Okay, good. I thought I bled outside that mast there for just a second. That's probably going to be close enough for government work. Let's turn off that overlay there. Close that out. Yeah, that looks pretty all right. All right, so from here, I'm pretty happy with the basics. There's some other distractions I see in the sand, like the running cables that are holding these in place. I'm gonna play with those a little bit in on-one layers, see if I can tidy that up with the perfect eraser, and then add a little more dynamic contrast for the foreground only. And after that, I think this will be called about done. So let's get this over into the photo layers here. I'm on photo. All right, in layers, let's see if we can do something about some of these cables here. So Q key for the perfect eraser, and let's try, oops, I just accidentally clicked. Let me undo that. Let's try this little piece here. That's pretty all right. This little piece there. We'll see how well the eraser maintains some of the texture of the sand. That can sometimes be a challenge for any erasing tools, and that maybe you need to go to a clone tool. This is I actually cover tons of this stuff in a video course that I have about removing distractions. When to use clone and when to use the eraser and how to use them together and all that kind of thing. This is doing a pretty good job. I'm just going to do a couple more single clicks around here. Let's see if I bump up against the edge of the boat, are you going to take that line of the boat into consideration? Pretty good. We'll take that and be able to clean up the sand there. And as I noticed, I've got this little stray, whatever it is. I think I'll deal with that just with a crop because that's just going to be simpler than trying to tidy it up. Let me hold my shift key to keep my aspect ratio good and just enough to get that out of the way. And I'm also watching the skyline to make sure that I don't have some straggling little light that happens there. Apply that. All right, great. Okay, so from here, let's turn this into a smart layer and we'll send it over into effects, do a little bit of stylization. I still feel like I want to open up the the foreground here some. Certainly want to add some contrast. Let's start there. Dynamic contrast. I really only want this for the boats, somewhat in the background, but I don't want to emphasize the sand very much. Let's start with a gradient mask. We'll rotate that just a little bit, feather it out. I don't want to remove the contrast entirely from the background. I just want some of it taken away, the edge of it taken away. And I'm not going to concern myself too much with the mast. That's really not seem to be making much of a difference. To get close on that one, let's take a look and make sure that we don't have some funny looking change in where the bottom of the mask, which is the bottom of the mast, which is getting more of the contrast, suddenly looks, awkward compared to the top of the mast. And that doesn't seem to be happening. So that's great. So I don't have to worry myself with masking all that stuff away. What I do need to worry myself with is the sand. So I'm going to grab the quick mask and we're going to just sweep through these sandy areas here and let the quick mask do its magic. Nice, it did a good job. Okay, to see what we have there, that's looking really good. It did a very good job. Tiny bit of cleanup to do here. B for the brush key, X to switch into paint in, Command R to turn on the perfect brush, and then we'll just sweep right back through there so that we're maintaining that contrast on the boat. That's great. We'll smooth that out with the blur mask, just so it's not any hard edges there. And this does not need to be perfect. This is a very shadowy area to begin with. It's not going to be noticeable. And of course, this is not a prize-winning photo, so I'm not going to go painstakingly mask for 3 hours for what fundamentally is going to be an okay photo. It's a good practice photo. You get to practice your techniques and try things out. So that's looking cool. Revisit some of the sliders in dynamic contrast, because now we're really just punching up the boat. All right. Let's see about a little more warmth, a little more brightness. Actually, let's try a sunshine filter. See what this does for us here. It's being really slow. I have about 9 other things that you don't see running on my machine right now that are attributing to some of the slowdown here. But that's actually kind of nice. Adding a little bit of warmth there. That's cool. Actually, that's not cool. That's warm, Scott. You see what I did there, right? Let me see before and after on that. I like that. I think that's nicer. That's pretty good. One other thing here is I want to do kind of a vignette. And what just went through my head, the mental process here was I can add a vignette. I can control the shape. I can control the center. What I can't control is rotation. And I want the vignette to kind of wrap around this boat, which is at an angle. So instead of using a vignette, I'm going to use an adjustable gradient. And I will change the shape of the gradient to edges. So I'm going to mask away from the edges. And so I'll bring this down. And here I can rotate this shape so I can start to highlight just the boat itself. Let's position that right over the boat. I have a nice elliptical shape there. Rotate that just a little more. Position it. Really big feather. And now I can start to play with the brightness. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually brightening, if I crank this all the way up, I'm brightening the center of my ellipse and then fading it out. And maybe I'll actually bring that fade back in just a little bit. And now I can just fine tune the amount of brightness that I want to add, just a little bit. So it's effectively I'm doing a reverse vignette. I could have done a gradient, radial gradient with the center shape and then darkened. I would be darkening the edges. I just chose to think in terms of my subject. So I'm brightening my subject up and maybe add a little tiny bit of warmth to it. One of the other nice benefits, I guess, here in this case of using the adjustable gradient is I can control more than just vignetting. Again, I'm really accentuating the subject, and by virtue of the mask, I'm kind of creating a vignette as well. So before that and after, our eyes are going to be certainly drawn in here. I do need to shrink down that feather some. That's too wide. I'm getting too much of that warmth and brightness on the background of water. So let's bring that in a little bit, actually a lot more tighter. Let's try that again, before and after. Better. Bias toward the bow and not the stern. Okay, that's better. I like that. And let's go ahead. Let's still proceed with kind of the classic vignette here and finish things off. And this will be pretty. Actually, the subtle is good there. Let's just increase the size a little bit. So I'm just touching the corners, and we'll then reframe the feather to somewhere in the 50 or 60% range. All right. Pretty okay. I could see doing more things with this photo, adding a little more detail, brushing in some detail on the boat itself to really make that boat pop. But again, this being kind of an outtake shot and using it more to practice, it helps me with my thought process too. So the next time I capture a photo that, wow, I really got a great one here. I've done some of these thought exercises already, and I can really concentrate on the processing. So let's just take one last look. Here's before all those changes. This is what we brought in from Lightroom. And this is after. So yeah, certainly an improvement. The tip of the week, I think, is instead of using the vignette tool, sometimes using the adjustable gradient with a radial shape, either center or edges. And it gives you the ability to rotate that shape around a subject that may be at an angle. And second, you get extra controls for adding warmth or adding vibrance or other things you can do with the adjustable gradient that you don't get with your straight vignette tool. That brings us to the end of this week's In Post episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know. Likes, +1, social shares, all that stuff is always appreciated. I read every comment, and I do my very best to, at the very least, respond to them with a like, if not a comment back, because those are more meaningful than you can imagine. As are your questions. Love to get more questions from you. Please keep sending them in. I'm due to record the Q&A session, which I might be doing right after I finish this part here. So with that, I'll see you again next time real soon. Until then, happy shooting.